In April 1961, just weeks before his death, Gary Cooper made one final visit to his Montana ranch. What he left behind would stay hidden for decades. A collection of secret paintings, a saddle that changed Hollywood history, and memories that revealed the real man behind the legend. From his nervous breakdowns to his escape from fame, this ranch held secrets that would shock his biggest fans. Today, we're finally sharing what they found at the 7 Bar 9. Frank James Cooper, later known as Gary Cooper, was born on May 7, 1901, in Helena, Montana. His parents, Charles and Alice, were from England. The night he was born, a huge thunderstorm hit the town. People said the loud thunderclap, when baby Frank first cried, felt like nature announcing someone special was here. Frank grew up surrounded by Montana's wild beauty, but his parents kept their English traditions. At home, Frank and his brother Arthur had to speak proper British English and follow strict table manners, even while living in the untamed West. Frank's father was a lawyer and later a judge. He often took Frank to the Montana State Capitol, where Frank watched debates and admired Western art on the walls. This mix of frontier life and English values shaped who Frank became. In 1908, when Frank was just 7, a nearby dam burst, flooding the area. As the water rose, his mother grabbed Frank, jumped on a horse, and rode to safety. This close call stayed with Frank and gave him a deep respect for nature's power. Frank's early life had moments that hinted at his future. At age 9, he won a contest by reciting a poem with so much passion that the audience gave him a standing ovation. In the crowd was a vaudeville performer who later said, "That Cooper boy could be a star someday." No one believed it at the time, but they would. When Frank was 5, his father bought a 600-acre cattle ranch called the 7 Bar 9. Life on the ranch was tough. Frank woke up at dawn to do chores, even in freezing weather. He once said, "Shoveling manure at 40 below isn't romantic, but it teaches you a lot." At 12, he had a scary moment when a bull charged him. He managed to escape by quickly steering his horse into a patch of trees. The ranch also sparked his interest in Native American culture. Workers once found artifacts like arrowheads while digging a well, and Frank became fascinated by their history. When Frank was 9, his parents sent him and his brother to England for school. His mother wanted them to get a proper education. Moving from ranch life to a strict English boarding school was hard. Frank said it felt like going from roping cattle to reciting Shakespeare overnight. During school breaks, he returned to Montana, telling classmates wild stories about ranch life. They thought he was making it all up. In England, Frank discovered a love for books and art. He enjoyed Shakespeare and Dickens, which later helped him bring depth to his acting. But he also had awkward moments, like the time he wore cowboy boots and a Stetson to school, causing a stir. World War I ended his time in England, and he returned to Montana in 1914. Back home, he struggled to fit in. His British manners made him stand out, and locals teased him for his accent. Still, he worked hard to relearn ranching skills and reconnect with the land. At 17, Frank showed how unique he was. During a local rodeo, he gave a speech that mixed cowboy slang with quotes from Shakespeare. People were amazed. This ability to balance rough and refined would later make him a Hollywood star. On his 15th birthday, Gary Cooper's life changed forever. It was May 7, 1916, in Helena, Montana, and Gary decided to go for a drive with his friend Harvey Markham. The day started with excitement and fun, but it ended in disaster. Harvey was driving when the car suddenly went out of control. It flipped over again and again before landing upside down. Gary was trapped under the wreck, badly hurt and in terrible pain. When he finally pulled himself free, he could barely stand. His left side felt heavy and useless, like it didn't belong to him. At the hospital, doctors treated his cuts and bruises, but they didn't realize his hip was broken because they never took an X-ray. This mistake would change Gary's life forever. His hip didn't heal the way it should have, and he would deal with the effects for the rest of his life. The accident forced Gary to grow up fast. He was no longer a carefree boy. Now he had to deal with pain and recovery. The doctor, not understanding how bad his hip really was, suggested that horseback riding might help him heal. Thinking it was the right thing to do, Gary went back to his family's ranch and started riding every day. But instead of helping, it made things worse. The constant jolts from riding caused his hip to heal incorrectly, leaving him with a limp and permanent discomfort. Even though it was hard, Gary didn't give up. He spent hours on horseback, gritting his teeth through the pain. Over time, he developed his own way of walking and riding to cope with his injury. His walk became a bit uneven, with a slight limp, but it made him stand out. On horseback, he leaned slightly to one side, giving him a unique style that people would later recognize on screen. In 1924, Gary Cooper was 23 years old when he left Montana and moved to Los Angeles. He wanted to be an artist. His father had already gone there earlier that year to take care of some family estates, and Gary thought it was the perfect time to follow his dream. He had studied art in college for 2 years and even drew cartoons for a newspaper back in Montana. He was confident in his talent, but things didn't go as planned. Los Angeles was full of people chasing their dreams. Gary tried to find work in advertising but struggled to get steady jobs. One of his first tasks was painting cough drop ads on theater curtains, which wasn't what he had imagined for himself. To survive, he took whatever jobs he could find, selling signs, promoting a photographer's work, and even taking more art classes when he had the chance. He was doing his best, but life wasn't easy. Then, in early 1925, everything changed. Gary ran into 2 old friends from Montana who were working as extras and quiet and simple, but it worked because it felt real. Growing up in Montana, he wasn't someone who talked a lot. He observed more than he spoke. This translated to his acting. When he had trouble remembering lines, he would shorten them, and that gave his characters a calm, understated way of speaking. Directors admired this, saying he could show deep emotions with just his face or a small gesture. His performance in Sergeant York in 1941, where he played a real-life war hero, earned him an Oscar because it was so heartfelt and honest. Later, in High Noon in 1952, he played a sheriff facing a moral crisis. Without saying much, he showed fear, bravery, and determination. This role won him his second Oscar. Cooper didn't just become a famous actor, he also became one of the highest-paid people in Hollywood. By 1937, he was earning $370,214 a year, which today would be like making millions. In 1939, he made $482,819, making him the highest-earning person in the United States. He was smart about money, too. Instead of taking a big paycheck up front, he would ask for part of the profits from his movies. This paid off, like in 1954's Vera Cruz, where he earned $1.4 million in total. But his high earnings brought problems, too. In 1941, he owed $280,000 in back taxes and had to sell his art collection, which included paintings by famous artists like Picasso and Renoir. Gary Cooper lived a life full of drama, passion, and scandal during the late 1920s and early 1930s. He became famous not just for his acting, but for his many love affairs with some of Hollywood's biggest stars. His relationship with Lupe Velez started in 1929 when they worked together on The Wolf Song. Their romance was wild and intense, filled with public fights that everyone in Hollywood talked about. At one party, Velez, jealous and angry, unzipped Cooper's pants in front of everyone to check for another woman's perfume. But it was nothing compared to what happened in 1930. During one of their many fights, Velez found lipstick on his collar and snapped. She grabbed a knife and chased him through the house. Despite trying to dodge her, she caught him in his study and hurt his arm badly enough to require 15 stitches. Cooper's team tried to cover it up, saying he had a household accident, but the truth eventually got out. Still, Cooper didn't press charges and even got back together with Velez afterward, telling friends, "That's just Lupe. She loves with all her heart, and sometimes that includes her fists." The last chapter of Cooper and Velez's chaotic relationship happened in June 1931 at Union Station in Los Angeles. Cooper was at the station to catch a train to New York before leaving for Europe. Velez, furious about him leaving, rushed to the station and caused a scene. She shouted at him in front of everyone, calling him a son of a bitch, before pulling out a gun and firing a shot. The bullet missed, hitting a pillar instead, but it sent the crowd into panic. Cooper didn't seem scared, though. He boarded the train while Velez disappeared into the crowd. The story made headlines across the country. Velez later claimed the gun was just a starter pistol meant to scare him, but the damage was done. Their relationship was over for good. In 1930, Cooper had another affair, this time with Marlene Dietrich during the filming of Morocco. Dietrich was bold and stylish, known for her unique androgynous look. Their chemistry on screen spilled into real life, and their romance became an open secret. People often saw them together at fancy nightclubs and restaurants, which kept the gossip columns buzzing. Then, in 1931, Cooper had an affair with Carole Lombard while they filmed I Take This Woman. Lombard, who was married to William Powell, was famous for her quick wit and sense of humor. She even joked that Cooper was hung like a horse and can go all night, a comment that only made people talk about him even more. Cooper's charm wasn't limited to his romantic life. Director Howard Hawks, who worked with Cooper on several films, famously called him a snake when it came to women. Hawks described how Cooper could juggle multiple relationships at once, even during filming. While making Today We Live in 1933, Cooper was involved with Joan Crawford, his future wife Veronica Balfe, and a young actress, all at the same time. Hawks called it a master class in deception. Despite all the scandals, Cooper's career never suffered. He remained one of Hollywood's most beloved stars, and his all-American image stayed intact. Hawks summed it up perfectly. On screen, he was the perfect hero. Off screen, he left a trail of broken hearts. But damn if he wasn't charming while doing it. Gary Cooper married Veronica "Rocky" Balfe on December 15, 1933. The wedding was huge and glamorous, with over 250 guests at the Church of Our Lady of Lourdes in New York. Gary was 32, and Rocky, only 20, was a former actress known as Sandra Shaw. She had even acted in the famous movie King Kong. But after meeting Gary, she left acting to become his wife. They had met just 6 months earlier at a party hosted by Countess Di Frasso. Gary, known for his charm and many affairs, was instantly drawn to Rocky. She wasn't just beautiful, she was intelligent, graceful, and even a champion at skeet shooting. Their honeymoon was as grand as their wedding. They started by sailing on the SS Rex to Naples, then traveled through Rome, Paris, and London. After that, they went on an African safari, where Gary hunted big game. During this trip, he killed over 60 animals, including lions and a rhinoceros. Despite all this excitement, problems started soon after. Gary, famous for flirting, couldn't stay loyal. Just weeks after their honeymoon, he was already getting close to his co-star Fay Wray on the set of Viva Villa. This behavior became a pattern, making it hard for Rocky to trust him. In 1937, their daughter Maria Veronica Cooper was born on September 15th in Los Angeles. Gary was nervous and paced the hospital halls until Maria was born. When he saw her, he joked, "She looks like a skinned rabbit, but I guess they all do at first." Having a child seemed to soften Gary. He loved being a father and often brought Maria to his movie sets. He also introduced her to outdoor activities like riding horses and hunting at their ranch in Sun Valley, Idaho. By the time Maria was 10, she was going on hunting trips with him. But even though he was a caring father, Gary didn't stop having affairs, which created tension in the family. Maria later wrote in her memoir that their home felt full of love but also unspoken tension. Gary's most serious affair started in 1948 with Patricia Neal, who was much younger than him. They met while filming The Fountainhead, and their chemistry on screen became real-life romance. They didn't try to hide it, often going to parties and restaurants together. This hurt Rocky deeply, and even affected Maria, who admitted to spitting on the ground when she saw Patricia. In 1950, Patricia became pregnant with Gary's child. To avoid a scandal, Gary arranged for her to have an abortion, a decision Patricia later said haunted her forever. But Patricia wasn't the only woman in Gary's life. During this time, gossip columns linked him to Grace Kelly, Ingrid Bergman, and others. The stress of these affairs affected Gary's health. In 1951, he had surgery for bleeding ulcers, which were likely caused by the pressure of his double life. Everything came to a breaking point in May 1951 when Rocky found love letters from Patricia in Gary's desk. They had a huge fight, so loud that their 13-year-old daughter Maria locked herself in her room to escape it. Soon after, Gary moved out and stayed at the Beverly Hills Hotel, while Rocky stayed in their Brentwood mansion. The media went wild, with reporters camping outside to catch any news. Rocky managed to get a good financial settlement, including $1,100 a week in support, which was a lot at the time. During their separation, Gary's career took a hit. His film Distant Drums didn't do well, and people blamed it on his messy personal life. However, in 1952, he starred in High Noon and won an Oscar, which helped repair his image. Around the same time, Gary ended his affair with Patricia Neal, sending her a mink coat as a goodbye gift. Patricia later said those years with Gary were some of the most painful of her life. Even though they were separated, Gary and Rocky never got divorced. Both dated other people, but they couldn't completely move on. Maria felt stuck in the middle, splitting her time between her parents. In her diary, she wrote about wishing she could be with both of them all the time. In 1941, Cooper was 40 years old, and people were starting to wonder if his days as a leading man were over. That's when he got the role of Alvin York in Sergeant York. York was a real-life World War I hero who started as a pacifist but became a brave soldier. Cooper's calm and simple acting made him perfect for the part. The movie came out on July 2, 1941, right before America joined World War II. It was a huge hit, earning $6.4 million, the most of any movie that year. Critics loved Cooper's performance, saying he showed York's inner struggle beautifully. On February 26, 1942, Cooper won his first Oscar for it. His acceptance speech was just 17 seconds long. He said, "It was Sergeant Alvin York who won this award. I just got in his uniform." It was a big moment in his career. In 1952, Cooper won his second Oscar for High Noon. He played Marshal Will Kane, a lawman standing alone against a group of killers. The movie came out on July 24, 1952. At first, reviews were mixed, but over time, people saw it as a classic. The movie also had a deeper meaning, as many thought it was a message about Hollywood's blacklist era. Cooper was hesitant to take the role. He was 50 years old and dealing with health problems like a bleeding ulcer and back pain. But producer Stanley Kramer convinced him, and Cooper's tired, world-weary look fit the character perfectly. When Cooper won the Oscar at the 1953 Academy Awards, he wasn't there to accept it because he was in Mexico filming Blowing Wild. John Wayne accepted the award for him and joked, "I'm going to go back and find my favorite actor and give him this." One of Cooper's most loved roles was Lou Gehrig in The Pride of the Yankees, 1942. Surprisingly, Cooper didn't want the role at first. He was 41 years old, much older than Gehrig was when he retired from baseball at 36. Cooper also knew nothing about baseball and had never even been to a game. He joked, "I don't even know how to hold a bat." Cooper also felt it might be too soon to make a movie about Gehrig since he had passed away from ALS in 1941. But Gehrig's widow, Eleanor, visited Cooper and asked him to take the role. Her heartfelt plea convinced him. After the attack on Pearl Harbor a few days later, Cooper decided to do the film to boost American morale. He worked hard to prepare, training with former Yankees pitcher Lefty O'Doul. Cooper even learned to bat and throw left-handed, like Gehrig. The Pride of the Yankees premiered on July 14, 1942, and was a hit. Critics praised Cooper's performance, and the movie earned 11 Oscar nominations. Though Cooper didn't win for this role, many consider it one of his best performances. In his personal life, Cooper's reconciliation with his wife Rocky in 1954 marked a new chapter. After years of separation due to his affair with Patricia Neal, Cooper and Rocky started rebuilding their relationship. They were seen together in public again, and even celebrated Christmas as a family. Cooper's interest in Catholicism, the faith of his wife and daughter, also grew during this time, helping to strengthen their bond. As a symbol of their new beginning, the Coopers decided to build a new home together. On February 8, 1953, Cooper had purchased a 2-acre parcel on Baroda Drive in Holmby Hills for $35,000. The construction of their new home became a joint project, symbolizing their renewed commitment to their marriage. The reconciliation had a noticeable effect on Cooper's public image and career. He began to take on more mature roles, including his part in Friendly Persuasion, 1956, which earned him critical acclaim. His performance as a Quaker farmer grappling with pacifist beliefs during the Civil War was seen as a reflection of his personal growth. The couple's daughter, Maria, later said that their reunion was the greatest gift her parents could have given her. In 1960, Cooper's health began to fail. He was diagnosed with aggressive prostate cancer that had spread to his colon. Despite surgeries and treatments, his condition worsened. Cooper kept working,